Once upon a time, long, long ago in a faraway land, there existed a perfect book. A book written by men whom God chose as agents of His holy transmission. The book was intended to last forever, that all mankind and all generations would always have the very words of God to guide their beliefs and behaviors. Sadly, over time this perfect book was lost, but not all. Fortunately, other men made copies of the perfect book. These men did this of their own accord, not by God's true inspiration, and the copies they made of the perfect book had mistakes and couldn't be called the perfect book. Over the centuries, other men made copies of the copies, adding more mistakes, and eventually the truth was lost. But not completely. There was still some residue of the writings of God from the perfect book, but no one was quite sure if all the copies were wrong or which parts were 100% true. So men began to argue about which parts were true and which parts were not. And a schism rose up in the land, and men led by other men divided themselves into tribes, calling themselves by different names, according to what they believed was true of the perfect book that was lost. As time passed, leaders and scribes of these tribes wrote books about the perfect book that they only imagined, and they debated amongst themselves endlessly, trying to find their way back to the perfect book. And entire libraries filled up with articles, books, and volumes written about the perfect book that no one had ever seen or read. Still, that wasn't enough. The tribes of the land built huge buildings to house these books, and began teaching other people from the books housed in the great buildings about the perfect book none had ever seen or read. And more scribes and experts rose up in the land and afar, gathering followers unto themselves, teaching their ways and peddling books about the perfect book that was lost. And they gave each other medallions, certificates, titles, and honors to commemorate their achievements. Over time, the people of the land believed the things that the scribes and experts wrote in their books about the perfect book that no one had ever read. And the people gave the scribes and the experts gold and silver to tell them truth about the perfect book that didn't exist and no one had ever read. And the scribes and experts became exceedingly greedy and rich when they realized the people of the land were hungry for the truth and would give all they had to find it. So they continued writing books about the perfect book that was lost, hoping no one would ever find the perfect book that was lost, for fear that the people would no longer buy their books about the perfect book. And they kept the truth from the people, while filling up libraries and schools with books about the perfect book. And a great darkness fell upon the land. But unbeknownst to the great men of the land, the leaders, the scribes, the scholars, and priests, the perfect book had not been lost, and there were some people in the land that had read it. When the great men found out, they were fraught with anger, and brought these people before their secret tribunals to discredit them, fearing that if this became widely known amongst their followers, they would no longer buy their books. And the great men laughed and scorned the people who said they read the perfect book that everyone said had been lost. And they wrote books against the people who said they read the perfect book, demanding to be shown the perfect book. When the people who read the perfect book showed them the words, the great men scoffed, called them ignorant, and declared the perfect book imperfect. And God was angry, for they denied His promise to preserve the perfect book for the people of the land, for every generation, forever. And God was very angry, for they lied, and they called God a liar. So God was very, very angry with the great men of the land, and sent them a strong delusion, that they should believe a lie. And the great men of the land, blinded by their greed, continued in the lie, because it brought them much gold, silver, and prestige.